Circuit with Valerie. My name is Michael Williams. I'm your co-host, and we're going to dive right back into our conversation on what women need. All right, ladies, your next question. Is submission a part of what you do in a relationship? And why do you think it is so hard for women to submit?
Yes, we do submit. However, we submit a lot easier when the man is a man that you can follow. You understand what his vision is. You understand where he's trying to take the unit, and then it's easier for us to follow. It's very important to do that way if you look at it from a biblical standpoint, because that's the line that it goes: God, man, woman, children, and everything else that follows after that.
Okay.
I think it's hard for women I don't have a problem with it. Let me say that first of all.
Right.
I don't have a problem with submission because my husband and I respect each other in our roles, and I understand biblically how that works in a marriage. Mm-hmm. But I think it's hard for some women because if they're used to being single, and I'm not speaking of women who are married, but single women, if they're used to running a household, taking care of their kids, or managing businesses, or working, they have to lead in a sense in their own home. So by the time they get married, sometimes it's hard to transition from that leadership role and then submit to a man.
Well, and I think too that, women submit when a man gives them something to submit to. Yeah. A lot of times men don't give women a vision to submit to. And so as a woman, submission, instead of being a bad word or having a bad connotation to it, really is a place of liberation. So submission frees the woman up to play her role and to stay in her lane and to allow her husband to lead. And you don't submit to somebody who can't submit themselves to God. So if you don't give me something to submit to, right, that's when the inhibitions come in with me submitting. Also, I have to trust you to submit to you. Right. I think trust is a major thing that women look at when it comes to submitting. So if you can't follow a man, my next question to the woman is, then why are you with him?
Very good.
Good. You good?
I'm speaking as Valerie from the singles perspective. I don't have an issue with submission. Mm-hmm. I have my own company, my own business, and I had to learn how to become aggressive because of the type of business I was in. Mm-hmm. I do not like being aggressive in a relationship. And so if I have to take on that role, then the man becomes unattractive to me. Mm-hmm. So me as a single person, I love an aggressive man. I love a man that is in charge. When I've had to work, make decisions, do what I need to do business-wise, I want to come home and do that as well.
Yes.
Let me say this too. Sometimes I think women also have a problem balancing that. Because you are CEO in the boardroom, but when you come home, you take off your CEO hat and you put on the hat of a wife. And sometimes you bring your take charge attitude into your bedroom, and then that causes conflict, and you're wondering why there's so much tension between you and your significant other or you and your husband. And it's because you don't know when to cut that off. And so I'm saying to the women, be very, very careful about being in a leadership role at work and bringing that leader energy home, and all of that aggression that may need to be in your workplace, bringing it home to your husband.
Yes. You have to know how to separate the bedroom from the boardroom.
Absolutely.
Amen?
Absolutely.
All right. So I want to give a little bit of perspective, just real quick. So the man also has to submit to the woman. And I'm going to give you a situation why that happens. If you look up the definitions of submit, one of the definitions is to give. If you're applying for a job, you go and you submit your resume, which means you give them your resume. So what submission is really giving yourself to the other person. The woman is supposed to give up herself to her husband, but the husband is supposed to give up to his wife as well. And the Bible says that a husband is supposed to love his wife as Christ loved the church, where Christ gave his very life. So the man is supposed to be willing to submit his very life for his wife. So our call to submission is actually even greater than the woman's call to submission. All right? All right, cool. So let's go down to the next question. Why is it hard for women to communicate what they want sexually in a relationship?
I think sometimes that women, unfortunately, not all women, let's be clear, but women have inhibitions that, it's a mental thing for them. And then they feel like their significant other sees them one way, and they don't want for them to see that other side of them. And my thing is, if he's with you, he's with you for the totality of you, so why not show it? Right. So I think that's where a lot of times wires get crossed, and you don't get that open-mindedness that you should from a woman as it relates to sexuality, because you're trying to keep up this facade when there's really a freak in you that needs to come out.
Yep, I'm here for the freak.
You said you're here for the freak? What man isn't there for the freak? No, I'm just
by show of hands.
What man? I mean, and I'm serious. I think women, that's sometimes, you lose men in that area because you're not willing to say, you know what, just as much freak as you got in you, I got in me.
Come on now.
And I think that we need to stop being these little cookie cutter, Susie homemaker, don't want to put on some stilettos with, a trench coat with nothing under it. I mean, what happened to the freaking you? So, and if you ain't got that, then you need to go.
Go get that. Go get that.
And I'm gonna say this, and I mean this from everything that's in me. What you won't do, another woman will.
Yeah.
So I think you need to get to pleasing your husband, because it's another woman, and in Atlanta it's about 13 more women than one man that will do what you won't do.
Right.
So I'm saying, tap into your freak.
And they sell trench coats in every size. So you can find your size. Go online.
But for that woman who may not be as confident, I think to answer your question, some women may be a little shameful in an area. I want to say it's shameful. I think some women may assume that the man already know. And I think that's what you were saying. It's like you have to communicate that, because you shouldn't assume that he just already know what you need.
Absolutely.
So it has to be communicated.
Right.
Yeah, and you need to be like, babe, that ain't doing it it did it for me 6 months ago. It ain't doing it for me today. Can we try something else? Can we explore a little bit? And but vice versa. He needs to be able to say, babe, you know what? I liked it like that, 2 months ago, but can I get it like this tonight? And I think that's where the barriers need to come down. The marriage bed is undefiled. So what are you waiting on?
Amen. Cool. Big old question I've been really wanting to ask.
Let's pick up fresh.
So, and this is more like for the single women, and maybe we'll let some of the crowd chime in. But why do women who say they want relationships entertain situationships?
What are situationships?
What is a situationship?
I think we all know what a situationship. Come on, that's what I said. If somebody wants from the audience, no. So. A situationship is one of those things where you're just kind of going along with the flow. We just gonna play it by ear, and we're kind of doing all those things that kind of define a relationship without the commitment or without the titles.
I think that women don't want to. First of all, a lot of women go into things a little bit haphazardly, and they don't have a timeline. I'm a firm believer in timelines. But to your point, I think that a lot of times, as the men were saying earlier, they hate to ask the questions, or they hate to make the men accountable because they don't want to get the answer. Right. So, he may not be feeling you enough to pursue a relationship with you, but if you are in this little go with the flow type thing, and you decide, okay, you know what, I need to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, what are we doing here? You might not get the answer that you want. So I think a lot of times women are trying to hang on as long as they can because they feel like, they're attracted to him. They think that he's attracted to them. And so they want to see where it's going to go, when really it's not going anywhere at all, because you've never put a demand on it, or you never held the man accountable.
That part.
See, I hear what you're saying. I agree with that. I did that in my 20s. I did that in my 30s maybe. But at this point in my life, I don't have time to waste.
Mhm.
So I'm not gonna just go in a situational thing. I'm gonna ask questions. What is it that you want?
Yes.
And then I have the choice to make whether or not I accept that or not. But we're gonna communicate and say, what is it that you're looking for? If you're just looking for situation or a friend with benefits or just a friendship, then it's on me to make that decision. I may tell you, hey, I got enough male friends. I don't need another. So I wish you well. But that's just me.
Okay. Well, great. Well, that's going to bring our second part to what women need to a close. I want to give a hand for all of our ladies that are on our panel. Come on, give them a hand, y'all. For all our ladies on the panel. We enjoyed your answers. Everything was amazing. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Valerie on the circuit, playing music.
Wow, the ladies' conversation got more heated than I expected. Michael definitely gave us some questions to ponder on and to respond to. So, Dr. Candace, what do you think about what you heard on the ladies' segment?
Yes, I really enjoyed that segment as well. And some of the things that stuck out to me was first and foremost the question about infidelity. If the women would agree to stay and work and move forward with their partner should infidelity arise. And the piece that came up for me was more or less, infidelity was defined as having sex with another individual, but I also thought about infidelity. You could have infidelity with a bottle of alcohol. You could have infidelity with your best friend, but meaning from the space of if it takes away from our relationship and my marriage, that to me is infidelity. You can have infidelity with porn addiction. Those are things that kind of have an impact on how our relationship is and how we move as a couple. And it's reasons for it, as it was shared, that there is times where infidelity occurs because I can get away with it or it can just happen. And at the same token, there are typically some reasons for why those things occur. And, as a therapist, I find it more difficult to work with individuals who say they do it just because they can get away with it, because that to me states that you don't want to work on it and that you don't want to get better. That's just my opinion. However, when there is a space where it's saying that, I did make this bad decision, but I really want to make it work and make it better, that to me, it gets to a place where infidelity doesn't necessarily mean it has to end in divorce, but it's a matter of what the individuals are willing to do, what the spouse who committed the infidelity is willing to do, and the spouse who was betrayed is willing to do to move forward and make it work. The big piece about submission with roles. So submission, the way a lot of times, especially women, we define and look at submission as something negative, but it's as someone shared, I don't know if it was you, Valerie, that is liberating. That is something that I want to do.
Yes.
And submission is different than oppression and subjugation. Oppression is like, I feel bottled down, I feel trapped in this. Subjugation is the same experience. That's not the experience of submission. This is a thing where we submit to each other, and it looks differently based on our roles as wife and as husband. So those are the things that are important. And another piece is the definition of trust. John Gottman is like the relationship couples therapist guru, but basically the way he defines trust is that everything I say, do, feel, speak maximizes the well-being of my partner. So if I know that and I trust that, I have no issues with submission. And I feel like once we really understand what that means and the value of that, that submission will become less of a bad word and more of a word of something positive, something that we look forward to and that we're happy about. Now, this piece on sex and women, for men, like I stated earlier, is the Madonna horror complex. But for women, it's this sense of sexual repression. And I think one of the panelists spoke to that, especially if you're growing up in the church, that is, in my mind, is taboo. I'm supposed to suppress it. It's not okay for me to have sex. When I get married, now my mind has to catch up with the fact that I'm married. So it's still this sense of sexual repression that I feel ashamed that I don't feel right for being a sexual being. But the piece is is shifting from sexual repression to sexual liberation, that I am a sexual being and that it is okay. Because in our natural state, according to Foucault, he was like a philosopher who believed that sexuality was natural for us. Sexuality for men and women, we were to be liberal. We were to be feeling liberated. But this whole piece between the 17th and the 20th century in the Western hemisphere made us feel like that we had to repress our sexuality, especially as women. And the last piece is the communication. And that was something that was shared as well, about being explicit and expressing to each other what our needs are, especially for women, because women, we are very expressive, but we also have to be very explicit, especially sexually as well. It's like, hey, like I think you mentioned that
hey, you know, I like that last month or a couple years ago, but now I like it this way. I liked it when you did that, and giving feedback so that it's a safe space for that, and co-creating that safe space. Because I remember one of the women shared that, you know, they will only share as much as they're safe to share. So we have to co-create that space together to have that open communication.
Absolutely. We'll be right back after this.
Valerie on the circuit. Playing music.
Next week on the Circuit with Valerie.
As a partner, wife, or significant other, can you grow a man into his full potential?
No.
No, it's for the women.
Okay,
Is
so
that for the women?
okay, but a man said
I'm not trying to grow a man into
no. A man said no. So what now?
That's not gonna happen.
He said that's not gonna happen. Why?
Because we're not boys. I'm a man. You can't grow me.
Oh, women, are we in?
And I totally agree with him. I feel like this: if he's a man and he's presented himself as a man, there should be some growing that he wants to do on his own. Not that I have to make him grow.
Right.
Because if that's not something he's taking ownership in,
Then he's not gonna do it.
he's not going to do it anyway.
I think it's a
And I don't
cute way.
want that job.
Yeah, I think it's a cute way that women like to kind of hope that he becomes what they really want.
But and then
And
that
it's like that's not real. That's not
not
reality.
realistic.